What's up, guys? Nowstalgia Pod coming back at you with a special early spoiler-free review of The King, now out on Netflix, starring Timothée Chalamet and Robert Pattinson. Normally, as you guys know, if you watch what we do here, me and my co-host Pat Sheehan will go back and forth with stuff due to scheduling conflicts. Pat is not able to talk about it just yet, but we wanted to get something out there now because we were both really anticipating this film. So we're going to have a spoiler free convo right now. That's just me. And then myself and Pat will go full in with spoilers next week for the normal pod. So The King, why am I making time to do two reviews, right? Why am I so excited about this? Well, obviously that starts with Timothée Chalamet, right? The star of the movie playing King Henry V of England. And if you're watching this, you're probably aware that Chalamet is, the face of his acting generation, breaking out with Call Me By Your Name, Lady Bird as well, last year, Beautiful Boy, just tons of really impressive, charismatic performances. And we expect that to continue with Little Women this year, his second Greta Gerwig movie, as well as next year when he's in The French Dispatch with Wes Anderson, and of course, Dune from Denis Villeneuve. I think the Chalamet breakout in the mainstream sense is coming, and this movie, The King, given that's on Netflix, and Netflix does intend to promote it as one of their original films this year. They're releasing one seemingly every week. This is, another, I think, great step for him in terms of just getting out there because he hasn't been in anything that was a blockbuster to this point. So he's still not truly a household name, even if us on the internet know all about what Chalamet does. And this movie, The King, premiered at Venice back in September and got a bit of a middling reception, to be honest. And reminds me a lot of Netflix's movie last year from David Mackenzie, Outlaw King, starring Chris Pine, about Robert the Bruce. Very similar movie to the 2019's The King in a lot of regards. And I think we'll talk about the plot more specifically next week with Pat. But I enjoyed Chalamet's performance as well as the rest of the cast. But I do have to agree with most of the critics. I think the movie overall is pretty middling. The performances do stand out. Chalamet obviously carries the movie. He's in just about every scene. And, it's a long movie, 2.5 hours or so. That first half hour is before Hal is king, before he becomes Henry V. And he's a bit of a brooding character that doesn't want anything to do with the crown, doesn't have a good relationship with his father. And ultimately, I think that was an effective, first foray into the world, but it was a bit slow. And ultimately, I think the movie structurally is very up and down. Once Henry does take the throne, next thing we know, we're off fighting in France. And, there's a lot of themes going on with the movie, power, corruption, coming of age, but it's all explored really broadly and not really fleshed out at all. So nothing comes across as that new. So what we were left with is, a really well made period film. Obviously, this is taking place in the early 1400s, the 100 Years' War between England and France. That's where we are. And if you're not going to get anything super special, then I think in order to enjoy the movie, you just need to be a big fan of period films. I really liked Outlaw King, another movie that got a middling reception. I think this movie, The King, is enjoyable in parts, but I do wish it was a little shorter, or structurally it was just changed around a bit. But again, what we're left with is Chalamet really carrying a lot of his scenes. There's a battle speech he gives. There's a bunch of one-on-ones where his ability to really just wear all his emotions, something Chalamet has done throughout lots of his roles, is on full display. And that's good. And if you're a fan of his acting, I think you'll be a fan of this role. Honestly, my favorite aspect of the movie, though, is, of course, Robert Pattinson, who has a bit of a glorified cameo as the Dauphin, one of the Prince of France at the time. And, he's only in like maybe 3 scenes, but between his French accent and it's just the flamboyant choices, it's really enjoyable. It really steals all his scenes. And, having Chalamet in a movie with Pattinson, I think is really funny too, because Pattinson, post Twilight has been kind of doing what Chalamet has started his career with, right? Just working with tons of talented people. Obviously, Pattinson's on a bit of a run the past few years. I mean, just this year, right? We have Highlight from Claire Denis, The Lighthouse with Robert Eggers, and we know more is to come from our Pats, obviously culminating with the Batman in 2021, and of course Christopher Nolan's Tenet next year. So just seeing like these two, I guess, like paragons of film Twitter square off in a movie is great. I wish they had more scenes, you know. And ultimately, I think that the culminating battle in the movie, the Battle of Agincourt. Again, not going to spoil what happens, but I mean, this is Shakespeare, this is history, so I think I'm not breaking any ground here, but it's kind of reminiscent of both the battle at the end of Outlaw King and as well as the Battle of the Bastards in Game of Thrones on a slightly smaller scale. Uh, but yeah, overall, it's a movie that I think needed a bit of a restructure. It was written by Michôd, the director, as well as Joel Edgerton, who I think is actually also giving a quite inspired performance as Falstaff, obviously the character from Shakespeare. And just it didn't seem like there was a big like takeaway or like message for the king, like the broad strokes of like how being a king is challenging and corrupting, and it's hard to be just, even if you had the best intentions. And Hal, from the get-go, seemed to be someone who really wanted to bring peace after his father's various civil disputes. Yet, that's an easy concept for us to grasp, and we're not left with more. You know, I mean, again, and it's funny because this movie has a really deep bench too. I mean, Chalamet, Pattinson, obvious, Edgerton, awesome. And Sean Harris from Mission Impossible here. You got Lily Rose Depp in a small role as well, really good. And Mendelsohn plays King Henry IV. Dean Charles Chapman has a small role, very reminiscent of his previous turn as Tommen on Game of Thrones. Thomasin McKenzie, really small role as Henry V's sister. You know, wonderful cast, and a lot of them are just really underutilized. But yeah, I think if you're a fan of Chalamet or Pattinson's acting, I'd still recommend watching the movie because you'll enjoy all those moments. But structurally, and just in terms of like payoff, the movie's a bit of a disappointment, and you can kind of tell that Netflix knew this, especially once the Venice reception was pretty mixed. And I think the promo has ceased in a certain sense. Any awards campaign kind of fizzled out right then and there. I don't expect that to change, but hopefully this gets Chalamet in front of more audiences and also lets more people know that Pattinson is one of the best actors working right now, despite how people probably came to know about him from Twilight and Harry Potter. So a bit disappointed, but I'll talk more about the plot next week with Pat. So make sure you subscribe for that. And if you like movies, music, TV, just subscribe in general because we'll be bringing everything to you. So leave a comment if you enjoyed The King more than I did. I'm sure plenty of people will, but let me know what you thought, and I'll see you next time.